What if Adolf Hitler never died in 1945? The story we're all taught says that as Berlin crumbled in the final days of World War II, Hitler retreated into his underground bunker. The Soviets were only blocks away. The Third Reich was finished, and rather than be captured, he took his own life. That was supposed to be the end of one of history's most infamous figures. But let's imagine an alternative. Let's imagine Hitler didn't die, that somehow he slipped away into the chaos. The possibility alone has sparked countless theories, legends, and speculations, and it forces us to ask, what would the world have looked like if he had lived? Some say he could have escaped through hidden tunnels beneath Berlin. Others claim he was whisked away on a secret flight, or smuggled aboard a German U-boat that crossed the Atlantic. After all, many high-ranking Nazis did manage to flee Europe, escaping justice and starting new lives in South America, especially Argentina. Nazi officers, doctors, and scientists were documented living there for decades, so it's not impossible to imagine that Hitler himself might have followed the same path, disappearing into the mountains of Patagonia or the jungles of Brazil, quietly protected by sympathetic networks. But what then? By 1945, Germany was in ruins. The cities were bombed to rubble, its economy shattered, its armies destroyed. Hitler, even if alive, would never rebuild his Reich, but survival could still mean influence. Imagine the whispers, the Führer still lives. His loyalists, scattered and defeated, might have found new hope in those rumors. Underground groups in Europe, America, and South America might have looked to him as a symbol, keeping Nazi ideology alive in a way that simple martyrdom could not. Instead of being a dead dictator remembered as a warning from the past, he could have been a shadowy figure shaping the present. Now consider the political climate of the late 1940s. The Cold War was already beginning to take shape, with the United States and the Soviet Union fighting for global dominance. If proof had ever surfaced that Hitler was still alive, the consequences could have been explosive. The Soviets, who sacrificed millions of lives to defeat Nazi Germany, would have hunted him relentlessly. The Western Allies, embarrassed by their failure to finish the job, would have been desperate to capture him as well. His survival might have sparked dangerous standoffs between East and West, as both sides tried to control the narrative. And in a world where nuclear weapons were only just entering the picture, that kind of tension could have been catastrophic. There's also the personal question. What would Hitler have done in hiding? Would he have tried to rebuild a following, using his survival to inspire a new generation of fascists? Or would he have shrunk into obscurity, an old man in exile, powerless, while the world moved on without him? Some conspiracy theories claim he lived in Argentina until the 1960s or even the 70s, growing old in secret while the world rebuilt. If that were true, then it's chilling to think that one of history's greatest villains may have lived to watch the Cold War, the space race, the birth of television, even the rise of modern technology, all from the shadows. But here's the irony. The longer he would have lived, the less powerful he would have become. Time changes everything. Hitler, once the terrifying dictator of Europe, would eventually have been nothing more than an aging fugitive, a symbol without the armies and machinery of war that once made him so dangerous. His survival might have inspired radicals, but the world itself was moving in directions he couldn't control. Germany was rebuilding into a democracy. Europe was uniting, and globally, the Cold War divided the world into two new superpowers, America and the Soviet Union. Hitler, in reality, would have been irrelevant to all of that. Of course, we know now that Hitler really did die in 1945. In recent decades, DNA analysis and declassified Soviet files confirmed the remains found in Berlin belonged to him. The man was gone, but the myth of his escape has never disappeared, because the question itself is so haunting. What if the war had ended, but the man who started it all had simply walked away? Would the world be more dangerous? Would extremist movements be stronger today? Or would he have faded into history anyway, powerless against the tide of time? In the end, It might not be the idea of Hitler living that's most dangerous, it's the idea that evil can survive, adapt, and resurface if we let it. Whether or not he escaped doesn't change the lesson. What matters is that his ideology, his hate, and his violence can never be allowed to return. The story of Hitler's supposed survival is fascinating, but the reality is that his death in 1945 closed one of history's darkest chapters. And maybe that's exactly why we still wonder, what if it didn't?